run a business that does $26 million a year while working less than 2 hours in front of the computer. And in this video, I'm going to be sharing the journey going from zero to multiple 8 figures while having a lot of freedom and a lot of fun. And I'll be sharing hacks and strategies that you can go on and implement immediately in your own business and see massive growth. But before we get into that, it's important to understand where I come from. And so growing up, I was trained as a professional tennis player. My big dream, my big goal was to play professional tennis, and I was ranked #1 in the country in Switzerland. Grew up playing against all the best players in the world. Rafael Nadal from Spain, Novak Djokovic, and I even had the opportunity to train with the master himself, Roger Federer, when I was training at the Swiss Tennis Federation. So my dream, my goal was to become a pro tennis player, but I tore my quadriceps at age 17, and so that kind of is the worst time to get injured when you're going from the juniors to the pros. And after that, I got pneumonia twice. And so when everyone else from my generation was playing pro, I was nursing my injuries and my illness. And so I said, okay, enough is enough, let's pivot. And so I was forced to pivot very quickly into something else. And so I had always wanted to be free and blaze my own path. And so in 2007, I retired from tennis. And so I went into building online businesses. And that's what I've been doing for the last 15 years. And so everything starts pretty much in 2007. And so over the last 15 years, I've built businesses in multiple languages, sold digital products, physical products, and services of all kinds online using primarily online advertising. So paid media buying, paid advertising to generate new customers, new leads, and new business. And so over the years, I've written several books. I spoke at dozens of conferences too. In 2015, I launched actually a media buying agency in London, in the UK, with clients all over the world. So we did over 8 figures in services, so online advertising, marketing. I noticed in 2019 that the market was shifting, and I was interviewed at Facebook at their headquarters in Dublin. And so Facebook interviewed me because we were running a lot of paid media through what is now the Meta platforms. So we were spending a lot of money, spent over time over $20 million on ads. And so being a pretty large spender on Facebook meant that we had a good performance. And so I was interviewed by Facebook to share kind of the strategy and how I grew the agency from 0 in 2015 all the way up to dozens of employees and clients all around the world. Back to my tennis days where, you know, when things happen in the market, you have to change very quickly. And so during the interview at Facebook, I basically shared what is the foundation of the current portfolio business that does between $25 and $30 million a year. And I'm going to break everything down for you right now. So for those of you that have been running ads for any period of time, I started advertising on Google almost 20 years ago when I was selling digital products and doing affiliate marketing at the very beginning 20 years ago. You have noticed that year after year, you've gone through these cycles that advertising, so customer acquisition, distribution in general, the prices go up, right? So it's more expensive to acquire customers. And so what we found with the agency, we had physical offices in London, dozens of staff in London. What was interesting is that a lot of the clients we had needed more than just online advertising. So we were doing a lot of lead generation for local businesses, a lot of lead generation for online businesses, the e-commerce businesses. And so beyond just doing advertising for them, we noticed that it was getting tougher to acquire new customers. And so we found ourselves having to do more on the back end. That means that we were doing more CRO, so CRO, conversion rate optimization. We were doing more back-end marketing, email marketing, more follow-up. So building pretty much a lot of the back-end structures and sequences for clients. So it gave me a lot of experience over the last 15 years about advertising in general and converting cold traffic, ice cold traffic into repeat customers online. And so throughout the agency, we helped literally thousands of businesses around the world. And so it gave us a lot of data. And so I wrote several books about customer acquisition and marketing in general over the last 15 years. And so when things started to shift, when it started getting more expensive and almost too expensive to acquire customers with the old way of doing things, I noticed that all these clients needed more than just paid advertising. So we're doing a lot more work for pretty much the same pay. And that gave me the idea to basically shift completely the business model of running an agency and doing service for other businesses. Rather than doing it for other people, other businesses, do everything for us and our brands. And so the big shift here was acquiring equity and adding businesses to what has now become a portfolio company. And so that's exactly what I explained during that interview at Facebook, that the future, the growth that agencies can really tap into is not just providing a service, but really using the skill set they have and gaining, acquiring equity, negotiating equity deals to actually own and control brands and build a lot more value over time. Because the truth is, when you run an agency, when you do service for clients, I found that it's very difficult to break through the 300 to 500,000 a month in revenue. So growing a company, an agency in this case, from zero to multiple seven figures, I've done it several times, so it's pretty feasible. But I noticed that if you really want to go to $1 to $3 million a month, the structure of the agency needs to change. And so I wanted to have much more control and build more equity over time. So yes, we had dozens of people working across the agency, but it was time to really get more equity and to build something that was going to increase in value over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. If you have experience in marketing, digital marketing, advertising, customer acquisition, you have a very, very strong skill set and you can monetize it much more than just providing a service. And so fast forward a few years, right now the portfolio business does around $26 million a year and on its way to do $30 million per year in the coming months. And what's very interesting about that is the peace of mind it gives. And so over the last few years, we've acquired over 20 companies, we've sold several, and we have kept the majority. And we keep adding between 1 to 2 companies to the portfolio every single quarter. So the goal for us is to acquire between 6 to 10 new companies every year. That might accelerate, but that's kind of what's been working well for us. And in terms of the markets and how everything is structured, let's get into that right now so you understand kind of the potential that you have if you have a very strong skill set and how it can translate into much more money, freedom, equity, and value in the long run. And so the portfolio is composed of 3 main types of businesses. The first type is what we call a publishing business. So publishing businesses where we typically create and sell information. So ebooks, courses, coaching, and we either create everything house, so we manufacture and literally create the information, sell it, or we also partner up with other experts and we productize the knowledge they have and we distribute and we take care of the advertising, the sales, reporting, email marketing, all the back end basically. So that's the first type of business. So online publishing, basically selling information online, and I've been doing that for almost 20 years now, so it's an industry I know very well. The second type of business is what we call offline businesses. So these are typically brick and mortar businesses, plumbers, electricians. And so what's interesting with those businesses, we've acquired several over the last 12 months, is that they are boring. And so I love boring businesses. That's a topic for another video. But you know, in a world where everyone wants to get in on the newest and the hottest trend, I like getting into boring businesses and acquiring boring businesses. These are generally businesses run by people who are more senior in age and are either going to retire soon or want to retire but don't know how to sell their business and kind of put their business in someone else's hands. And we've done very well with those. And the goal for me in the portfolio over the next 5, 10, 20 years is to keep acquiring those businesses because very few of those offline businesses know about paid advertising and online marketing, social media marketing, because they've generated their business generally through referrals and word of mouth. So there's a big gap in the value we can bring, the expertise we have through online marketing, and then servicing those clients through an offline business and an offline solution. That's the second type of business. And the third type of business that we have in the portfolio are what we call SaaS businesses, so software as a service. Those businesses are amazing because the value they get is much higher than offline brick and mortar businesses, simply because, or should I say primarily because, the payment structure is usually recurring. So when you buy a membership, the company knows that you're going to stay for 1, 3, 6, 12 months, sometimes for years. And so we love those businesses because the value is huge. We can acquire a customer on day one, pay for the ad spend, pay for the acquisition of that customer. And if we do a good job and the software works, we can keep that customer for 6 months, a year, and sometimes multiple years. So we've acquired several of those over the last few years and flipped a few of those at a very, very good price. But we also want to keep adding adding SaaS businesses and software because we as people have been using more software businesses and software tools over the last 5-10 years, and it's only going to get bigger. So those are the three main industries: information publishing, offline businesses, and software. And that's pretty much the strategy that we use, and we will keep going after those businesses and adding those to the portfolio in the coming years. And so the vision for the portfolio business is just to keep doing what's working, so keep growing the number of companies that we acquire, and over the next 5-10 years get to a place where we have 100 companies. That's kind of my goal, having 100 profitable companies in the portfolio and do more of the same. A lot of people want to jump from one thing to the other and start something new, but when you have something that works, you might as well just go all in with that and just grow what's already working. So that's kind of the goal. Now, with that being said, let me walk you through the 8 hacks or the 8 lessons that I picked up going from zero and getting to multiple 8 figures a year. And so lesson number 1 is that you actually need to be very, very, very good at something. You need to be a master at something, and that only comes with time and energy and repetition. You've probably heard about the 10,000 hour rule. If you want to become a master at something, you actually need to put in the hours. I've been doing this full time for over 15 years. Every single day, I put in tens of thousands of hours in all aspects of building a business, from recruiting to doing customer support. I was doing my own customer service and customer support at the very beginning because I didn't have the money to hire anyone. So I've gone through every single step of the business. Now, of course, it's much easier to hire people once you have money and you have capital to deploy, but my point is there's no shortcuts. It's going to take time to actually master something. And so if you're young, or actually however old you might be, you need to actually focus on becoming a master at something. You need to decide, okay, I'm going to be excellent at sales, or I'm going to be excellent at paid advertising, or I'm going to be excellent at social media, organic growth. But you need to pick something, and you need to say, okay, I'm going to put in my 10, 15,000 hours because I need to become a master at that. So you need to put in the time. That's number 1. Lesson number 2 is that you need to have a long-term vision. And this is something I regret because I didn't have a long-term vision when I was younger. What do I mean by having a long-term vision? Well, if you have a skill set in marketing, digital marketing, whatever the case may be, or you're just inspired and you want to learn something new and start a new career, that's great. What you have to think, and the way I would suggest you start thinking, is not just about the next 3 to 6 months or the next product launch or the next offer, but really think about building a real business that can exist in 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years. And so instead of thinking in the next 3 to 6 months, start thinking in the next 3 to 6 years, in the next 30 to 60 years. My vision for the portfolio business is literally the next 10 to 20 years. So the decisions I make are very different than if I was just motivated by the next 3 to 6 months. I have no interest, very openly, no interest about what's going to work in the next 3 months. I want to make sure that the portfolio grows, keeps growing. But if we have 3 months without a new product launch, that's fine. My goals are set for the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And so if I could go back in time and coach myself, I would say, you know what? Having a strong skill set is great, but make sure that you stretch your time horizon. Instead of thinking for the next product launch or the next webinar or the next partnership, think of the next several years. Are you putting time into something that can last 2, 3, 5, 10 years? Because when you start thinking like that, you will, first of all, make better decisions, and you will have much less stress on a day-to-day basis because you know that you're working towards something that can grow very, very well over time. Lesson number 3 is you need to know yourself very well. And so that only comes with experience. Of course, if I could go back in time and again, coach myself and say, you know what, you need to know yourself, I'd probably look at myself right now and say, sure, I know myself, but do you really know what you want and what you don't want in business? One of the best ways to actually open Pandora's box in a way and really dig into who you are and what you want, your needs, your desires, your fears, is to start by taking a personality test. There's a bunch that you can take. I've done many of them. I don't recommend one in particular. I think that they all bring value, but I do think you need to really dig in and understand, who are you? Are you interested in fame? Are you interested in status? Are you interested in money? Are you interested in doing good and giving back? What are you driven by? Are you introspective? Are you an introvert? Are you an extrovert? Do you like leading? Do you like working in teams? Do you like to work alone? All these things that I wish I knew 15, 20 years ago. And if I could go back, I would really say, pay attention and build something that matches your personality, because maybe the business that you have right now isn't suited for the person you are. And so step one is really learning about who you are. Even if it's uncomfortable, go do those personality tests. It'll give you a lot of insight, and maybe you'll discover things that you don't even know about yourself. And so for me, in my situation, there's some things I like in business, some things I don't like. I don't like being on calls all day. I don't want to be in front of the computer all day. 2 hours is pretty much the max I do in front of the computer. I like spending time with my family, my friends, my wife, going out, enjoying, traveling. And so for me, what's important is, yes, the business is important, but it has to suit my goals. And there's a bunch of other rules that I have from my own way of functioning, and you need to have rules for yourself too. And the only way you can really have a business that suits your personality is if you actually get to know yourself. So that's lesson number 3, is really building a business around who you are, not trying to force yourself and become someone that you're not in order to get the business to run. Because I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs try to force it and then they just crash and burn and they go through depression. It's awful to watch. So start with you. Who are you? How do you like to work? And then build a business that fits who you are. Lesson number 4 is that if you can generate business, if you can get people to come into the store, if you can get people to click on a website, click on an ad, get people to buy, if you can close on the phone, if you know how to write high converting email sequences, you hold the keys and you have the leverage. If you don't, you can have to build that skill set, or just find someone else who is very skilled at that and partner up with them. But the individual who knows how to get business and increase the amount of customers, the amount of money customers spend, repeat purchases, sales, create funnels and monetize cold traffic, so people who have never heard of a brand and then spend money with that brand, those are the people who actually hold leverage. And so that's one of the things that I would say is probably the most important thing to master, is if you can actually become a rainmaker in a way, and if you know how to get more business in, it will put you in such an amazing position to go and negotiate with businesses to get equity. So you need to become a master at customer acquisition, customer retention, sales, and in general, you need to be able to walk into a business and say, okay, I have 3-4 ideas that can really boost a business. If you've put in the 10, 15, 20,000 hours of experience and skill set and you've actually practiced that skill, it'll become very easy. And so if you haven't, you need to put in that time. But again, if you can get customers, you have leverage. Lesson number 5 is that if you want to grow to that multiple 8-figure a year business, you need to learn about deal making and negotiating. So this is a very different skill set than just doing social media or doing paid ads or hiring for that matter. You need to learn about deal making. You're going to need to learn how to read statements, P&L statements, profit loss statements. You're going to have to learn how to read between the lines when you see an offer. You're going to have to understand the value of a business. What is the intrinsic value of a business? What is the potential of a business? You're going to have to understand really about how to negotiate. Do you go in lowball the offer? Do you go in with a fair offer? What do you say when the business owner you're trying to negotiate with shuts you down? How do you alleviate his fears? How do you position yourself to make a deal and gain a business owner's trust? All those things that can take years to master. If you really want to put yourself in a place where you have leverage and you can go in and make these deals, you're going to have to learn about deal making. So how do you learn? You have to be around people who make deals. The best way to learn is to be around people who make deals, who negotiate, and who've been there and done that. That's the truth. And so yes, you can raise money and go in and buy a bunch of businesses, but the valuations are going to be too high. You're going to overpay. You might buy a lemon. So you really need to work with people who know what they're doing. So that means building a network with people who are deal makers in private equity and who have done a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And that's what I've done. So one of the best ways to do that is actually to build a network, build your network, and be around people who have done deals, people who are deal makers, people who negotiate, people who work in private equity firms, people who have an M&A, mergers and acquisitions background, people who have done these deals. It's very difficult to go out in the world and start making deals yourself if you don't know what you're doing, especially because you can overpay by hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars if you negotiate a bad deal. So again, one of the things that, again, 15 years ago, I wish I knew earlier was deal making and negotiating. You can pick up a few books on Amazon to start getting into that mindset. But again, the best way of learning about that is to meet people, build a network of people who actively do it. Lesson number 6 is that you actually need to get results for businesses, right? So let's say you buy a business and you get a good deal, or you start a new business, or you partner partner with someone else who has a business, how are you going to actually grow it? How are you going to get more customers to come in? How are you going to reactivate customers who haven't bought in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? How are you going to launch a new product? How are you going to increase margins? How are you going to add a rebuild product, a recurring product that customers can pay for monthly? How are you going to increase the long-term value of that business and that brand? So you need to be able to actually show and deliver results. And again, if you want to become good at this, you need to do it. You can't read about this in a book. Yes, you can learn about the basic skill set, but true mastery will come from doing it. And so if you have done it, maybe you're not aware and you don't realize the potential that you have with the skill set you already have. If you've been in business for a few years, you've had your own clients, you know how to do a lot of this stuff, you're basically sitting on gold. Instead of working for other people and other brands and businesses, you can go out and do deals and gain equity. Or you can do both. You can keep the service side and actually go out and do equity. That's something that I've done for a few years, where you do both. You get equity and you still have your clients. You have to realize that you actually need to get results. And so you can go and get a great deal, you can negotiate, get equity. But if you get equity and you can't deliver results, it's going to create a lot of friction with the business owner, your partner. So again, you need to be good at something. If you're not there yet, or if you feel you're not there yet, you need to put in the hours, you need to put in the work, and maybe go work for someone else who is rolling at the level you want to roll at. Lesson number 7 is you need to get good at hiring talent, hiring and finding talent. And to be honest, it's one of the biggest issues that most companies face, right? So when you go from 0 to 6 figures, mainly what you're doing is trying to prove product market fit. You're looking at a market, you're trying to find a product that the market wants, and you're selling it, right? You can do that in your basement. You can get to 6 figures or even multiple 6 figures yourself or with a virtual assistant. When you're doing multiple 8 figures, the challenge is finding good people who can operate businesses for you and with you and who understand things, so you don't always need to brief them and train them. That's the biggest difference between a 6-figure business, an 8-figure, multiple 8-figure business, is talent. How do you find talent? And so you need to become very good at detecting talent, detecting potential, finding underappreciated assets, people who work for themselves, people who might be freelancers and who can come in and help your business, or literally going out and hiring very high-level people, depending on the capital you have. So again, going from 0 to 6 figures is proving product market fit. At least that's how I see it and how I've done it. But when you get into the multiple 7 figures and multiple 8 figures, it's pretty much how good is your team, right? And so you need to be good at finding people, attracting people, retaining talent, because the higher you go, then you'll have to deal with other companies trying to poach your best employees. Happens all the time. And it's funny, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who is very high up at one of the main social media networks that you all know, and he said that one of the main problems they face is talent, attracting talent, but also retaining talent, because other companies come in, other competing social media networks come in and try to poach them, right? Overpay with, better bonuses. And so every company past a certain point struggles with attracting talent, the best talent, and retaining talent. And so if you want to grow to that next level and you want to build a business with, dozens of people working for you, we have over 60 people. We're nearing around 70 to 80 people by the time I'm recording this video. You're going to have one of your biggest challenges, should I say, will be getting good people and retaining the best people that you hire. And so you're going to go through a lot of hirings. We've spent millions of dollars over the years hiring people, training people, and some people you will have to invest a lot of money in to train them, and then they will leave literally a few weeks after joining you, and others will rise up through a company and become incredible assets. But the bottom line is hiring and retaining talent will be one of the main things that you should be looking at. Even if you're a one-man band or a one-woman band right now, learn about hiring, because you will need to get at least a virtual assistant or someone helping you for day-to-day tasks at some point. The sooner you can learn about hiring, the better you will be. Lesson number 8 is you need to hang out with people and spend time with people who think and operate at a much bigger and higher level. Why? Because you've probably heard about this. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. It's very cliche, but it's very true. If you want to grow, if you're stuck, if you're plateauing in your income, you need to look for people and connect with people who are at a much higher level. Because Because something that happens over time is that if you hang out with the same people in your industry, maybe they're very nice, they're great, and you keep those friends, but you all get tunnel vision. And that's what I've noticed, right? If you are a copywriter and you hang out only with copywriters in Facebook groups and, networking events, that's great. But you know what? You're only hanging out with copywriters. You need to go hang out with people who are outside of that industry. If you're an accountant, if you're a graphic designer, if you're a social media person, you need to hang out with people outside of that industry. It'll give you a completely different perspective, and also it'll get you out of like the echo chamber. It'll get you out of having tunnel vision. And personally, what I found is, first of all, I've been very lucky to go through my first career, which was pro sports. A lot of my friends are still pro athletes. They either just retired, because I'm at the age now where pro athletes are starting to retire or have already retired. Some of them are into coaching professional teams. And I also have a lot of finance people in my network, a lot of people who did M&A, mergers and acquisitions, guys who've negotiated $100 million deals, guys who operate in private equity, people who've sold their company for hundreds of millions of dollars, people who have run hedge funds and managed billions of dollars in assets. And so if you want to operate at a high level, you need to make sure that you're not operating and hanging out only with the same people. Nothing against them, but just so you understand, if you hang out with the same people, you will suffer from tunnel vision. You need to get out of the circles that you've been in and meet other people who roll at a higher level. That's lesson number 8. If I could go back and coach myself, I was very lucky and fortunate, because being in pro sports and being trained as a pro athlete helped me meet a lot of pro athletes who are still professionals or who have transitioned to becoming coaches and have different experiences. And you have to understand that if you want a different output, so if you want a different income, a different revenue level, you need to have a different input, right? The information, the data that you collect, the people you meet, the conversations you have need to change, need to evolve. And so that's the 8th lesson. Make sure that you don't have tunnel vision, make sure that you meet other people and that you hang out, or at least start building your network and start connecting with people who operate at a much higher level. If you're doing $100,000 a year, you need to be meeting people who do 10, 50, 100, $500 million a year. If you're just starting your business and you want to get to $10,000 a month, you need to be hanging out with people who have done $1 million, 5, 10, 50, or 100 million, because you need to understand how they think. And that's lesson number 8 for you. And that's what's helped me a lot building this process. And I hope that helps you too. And so that's it for these 8 lessons. I hope you found some value. If you want more information about all this, I'll be doing a lot more videos and content. So click subscribe around this video. And if you want to find out more about what we do and the things we have, go to the website. You should see my website at some point around this page, around this video. Click there and you can just subscribe to what we have and stay connected. That's it, and I'll talk to you soon.